Hey guys, Zane here with another One Take review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Freddie Gibbs album, Soul Sold Separately. Soul Sold Separately is the latest studio album from rapper and musician, as well as somewhat of a poet, Freddie Gibbs, an individual who is really just a legend in the making at this point, and with classics under his belt like Pinata, as well as the fan favorite Bandana, he really does have a lot of expectation put upon him whenever he announces a new project, and as such, there's a lot of hype surrounding Soul Sold Separately, and I don't think it lives up to the vast majority of that aforementioned hype, but at the same time, it's still a solid record that is highly recommendable to anyone looking for a solid hip-hop album, especially if you are a pre-established Freddie Gibbs fan. First things first, this is straightforward Freddie Gibbs at heart. He doesn't really do anything experimental here, and he doesn't have a consistent producer backing him to do anything experimental in that regard either. Cats like Madlib and The Alchemist do appear here, I will say that much, but they aren't here 24/7, so really it's up to Freddie himself to deliver any sort of experimentation or change up in style for him, and he just simply doesn't do that, but that's not necessarily a bad thing either. His monotonous voice and delivery style is immediately recognizable, and he's easily one of the most consistent performers in his particular corner of hip-hop at the moment. There's no denying any of that whatsoever, and especially critics will agree upon that, and as such, there's really no way for him to fail here in terms of delivery. He would have to take some sort of massive, misguided creative leap for him to do that, but at the same time, it's not a super impressive album either, because there's no risks being taken, but again, nonetheless, that's completely okay. It still results in a perfectly fine and even at times very strong performance from Gibbs overall, and another one to add to a discography full of strong or better performances for the most part. The same could arguably also be said about the lyricism here, as it deals with a lot of the similar mafioso fare that Freddie Gibbs has been relying on since the earliest days of his career. He's always been knee-deep and even neck-deep at times in the realm of boom bap, gangster rap, and all of the associated subgenres and niches and movements that come along with those particular forms of rapping and hip-hop. So again, it's just something that is pretty expected of him, but he has always done it well, and Soul Sold Separately is no exception to that rule by any means, and some of the more introspective moments that are demonstrated here are strong as well, especially as Gibbs reflects on the death of Pop Smoke and what that made him think of in terms of his own place in the universe, and how that really personally affected him and made him look at violence and the general attacks that are being made against not only rappers but just everyday people due to violent crime. It's rare that Gibbs really gets into some sort of deep philosophical personal conversation with the listener. In fact, it's pretty much non-existent for the most part, but when he does kind of get a step or two closer to doing so, it's something that's always highly respectable, well thought out, and pairs fairly well with, again, the general standard straightforward mafioso kind of style of songwriting and lyricism that he has been reliant on for a very long time now. The production here is also great, as it features a number of extraordinarily talented people behind the scenes, like Anderson .Paak as well as James Blake, alongside some returning previous collaborators from Gibbs' prior albums like Madlib and The Alchemist. Madlib, of course, working on Pinata, the absolute massive behemoth of a record that is in the current hip-hop landscape, while The Alchemist worked on Gibbs' last studio album, Alfredo, another smash hit in terms of critical acclaim and even success within a lot of music geek circles. It's a crisp listening experience overall that really puts Gibbs and the mic at the forefront of the album. There's certainly no issues with mixing here whatsoever, while still ensuring that most of the instrumentals never really fall to the back burner either. They are still ensured a place of prominence in each individual song that they belong to. It's just that Gibbs, as always, is the primary focus here due to the fact that there is a variety of different producers being here. I mean, when Madlib works with him throughout the entirety of an album, it makes sense that there's some time dedicated exclusively to the instrumentals. I mean, come on, it's Madlib. What are you going to do, not give him time to shine on his own? But at the same time, Gibbs is an individual with a lot of presence, performance, and charisma behind the mic, so it only makes sense for a record like Soul Sold Separately, with a number of different people behind the scenes working to really just tie all of the individual tracks here together, that Gibbs would be the primary focus on the album. And again, as long as he really puts his all well into his performance, which generally speaking he does throughout Soul Sold Separately. It works out. Also, as a small side note, this record features some of the most trap-based work that Gibbs has done in a little bit. I mean, he's always been involved in trap. In fact, some of his earlier projects were heavily based around a unique style of trap, but he has since distanced himself from that and gone into the realm of boom bap and generally darker themes musically. You could even argue that Alfredo was kind of surrealistic at times in terms of actual production style, maybe ethereal in a gritty grime kind of manner. So hearing him take up some more traditional trap influences once again is interesting to say the least, and a nice throwback to prior Gibbs projects. And while it won't necessarily go over super well with a lot of his people who are fans that have been fans only since the Pinata days or maybe only since the Alfredo days, it is something that I think works overall and really does prove that he can still take up that particular style well years after abandoning it for something slightly darker. So overall, Soul Sold Separately isn't necessarily a flawed album, it's just not the most exciting thing that Gibbs has ever done. It lacks any particular risks or anything like that, but at the same time, it's further proof that Freddie Gibbs is one of the absolute powerhouses of modern day hip-hop, and when you give him an array of extraordinarily talented producers, you're bound to get something of value. I'm going to give this record 3.5 stars out of 5. My one take on this album is that although it doesn't quite reach the high standards previously set by albums like Pinata and Alfredo, the only mistake that Soul Sold Separately makes is allowing Joe Rogan to have a feature for some unknown reason. So again, 3.5 stars out of 5, and with that being said, that's the end of this review, and I will see you guys in the next one.